Welcome to AUC Author Series. In this series of programs, we interview the authors in the Atlanta University-centered community and introduce you to their latest published works. This program is produced by Brad Ost and Daniel Lee.
Our guest today is Dr. Margaret Aymer, Associate Professor and Chair of Area 1 at the Interdenominational Theological Center. Dr. Aymer will be discussing her latest work, Confessing the Beatitudes.
Dr. Aymer, it's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Brad.
We really appreciate you coming. You are here initially to talk about your new Bible study that you've created for the Horizons. It's the Women of the Presbyterian Church.
That's correct. Yeah, Presbyterian Women is an organization of the Presbyterian Church. It's over 100 years old, and it's been one of their major mission organizations over the last 100 years. They do an annual Bible study. They have a magazine called Horizons that publishes 7 issues. 6 are regular magazine issues, and the 7th is a Bible study. Right. The Bible study author is chosen 3 years in advance by committee. The topic is chosen 4 years in advance by committee.
Right.
And the author is given about a year and a half to write it. The study actually is sent out to women's groups to vet it and to give comments back to the author. And it is rewritten. They choose the artists. They choose people to do the residual materials. They do a whole set of materials on their website in addition to the study. And then this year they did a DVD for the first time.
Oh, okay.
So I also videotaped a DVD of me teaching online lessons.
Okay, great.
And this year for the first time we're also doing a blog. So it's quite a production.
Yeah.
They tend to get some really amazing authors.
Right.
For the study on Revelation to John, they got Barbara Rossing, who's one of the real experts on Revelation to John in the country. For the study on Joshua, they got the president of the Near Eastern School of Theology in Lebanon, Mary Mikhail. I know that Dr. Elizabeth Hinson Hasty, who is a theologian and ethicist from Louisville, is going to be doing the one on 2 Corinthians. So they really get some amazing folks to do this, and it's quite a journy.
Yeah. I think they have gotten somebody amazing in you to do it as well.
Thank
you. What you were doing it on was, the title is Confessing the Beatitudes. It's Luke and Matthew that you're going
That's right.
From. And I have a question about how the Holy Spirit works. And that question is, if it was chosen, you were chosen 4 years in advance? Or the topic was 4 years in advance, you 3 years in advance.
That's correct.
You didn't know what was coming.
I did not know.
Did it sort of resonate for you when it finally arrived? It has been
extraordinary how much it has resonated. The topic, the Beatitudes, you would think are kind of a quiet and staid topic, but the Beatitudes are very deeply economic. They have a lot of conversation about empire and economy going on underneath the surface of Jesus' Beatitudes, both in Matthew and in Luke as they are recorded. And in the middle of the Occupy Wall Street movement that's going on right now, in the middle of the Great Recession, it's ringing extremely, extremely relevant in ways that I could not have foreseen. And I don't think that the people who chose the text or who told me how they wanted me to write it could have foreseen. I don't think any one of us saw it coming.
Right.
And furthermore, I put in the study something called the Accra Confession. Okay. The Accra Confession was published by it was passed by the World Alliance of Reformed Churches. Okay. This is a global group of Reformed churches, some 75 million Reformed people strong, around the world, who regularly come together in convocation to talk about what it means to be a Reformed Christian, Presbyterian, Lutheran, that sort of thing, a Reformed Christian globally.
Right.
There are more Presbyterians in Kenya or Mexico or Korea than there are in the United States. For instance, Reformed Christianity is global, and we are actually the smallest branch of it.
Wow.
Or one of the smallest branches of it. So bringing in the Accra Confession deals a lot with the economy, the ecology, and the earth.
Right.
And it deals with the way in which the current global structure has really hurt what we would call today the bottom 99%, not just of the United States, but globally, the bottom 99%. One of the things they said was 24,000 people die of starvation every day. Mm-hmm. That's part of the confession. Right. That the number of people living on less than $1 a day is growing. That's part of the confession. Well, I put that confession into conversation with Jesus' Beatitudes. What does it mean for Jesus to talk about the poor, which in Greek is the destitute, when one is dealing with the realities on the ground today that the destitute are dying, and that we have an increasing number of people that are truly, utterly financially destitute, living on less than $1 a day. So it's become extremely relevant in ways I could never have imagined.
I want to get back to it, but I want to follow up on something you were saying right here, and I hope it doesn't take us on too much of a tangent. You see Occupy, Wall Street Occupy America, sort of, and they're talking about the 99% and the 1%, and it seems to be a focus on America. Are we too inwardly focused when we're talking about 99%? It's us middle class and us poor. Rather, you're disturbing economic statistic there about the rest of the world. Are we too inwardly focused on us being the 99% rather than the rest?
I don't know if it's that we're too inwardly focused as that we have a kind of a myopia. We are just now beginning to realize what the rest of the world has been going through for the last 3 decades, 4 decades. It's only now hitting us. You know, when one of the major candidates for president is arguing for the demolition of child labor laws and sending kids back into the workforce, well, that's what's going on in the rest of the world. It's only just now coming to the United States. You know, so I think in one sense it's good for us to understand that the 1% of this country are really becoming a plutocracy, and we need to ask whether or not that's what we want to be and that's who we want to be as a nation. But beyond that, it's really critical for us to realize that in the rest of the world, we, the 99%, are the plutocracy.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, anybody in this country that's had 3 meals a day, we are part of the plutocracy.
Right. So and I want to get back here, you've been very socially active here as well. So when you were doing the Beatitudes, how did you, in your preparing this study, how did you synthesize a global view with what you're doing locally? What was it Tip O'Neill said all politics are local?
All politics is local.
How did you apply Beatitudes to going local as you do and globally?
Well, the way I tried to do this is I tried to help the women as they're studying think both locally and globally. So I start with the ancient picture. This is what's going on in Jesus' day. This is what Jesus is saying. This is how it relates to the Roman Empire. Then I take it globally to the Accra Confession. This is how this connects to what's going on in the world around. But then I ask them, so go back and look in your own community. And I always end the study with a confession from my own perspective, from where I live in my own community. So when we talk about HIV and AIDS in there, I worked for many years as part of an HIV/AIDS organization. I've worked and known a lot of students and faculty, both in this school, but also in other schools that are HIV positive. You know, so it matters to me because it's here, but it also matters to me because I have Kenyan students talking about burying folks every week. They come to ITC as seminarians, and they want more resources on funerals because that's what they do when they're home. They do funerals constantly. So you've got both of those things going on, and I actually tried to make it a bit of a braid, because by bringing in the historical as one strand and bringing in the global as a second strand, if you don't have a way to speak about it locally, it's easy to just kind of dismiss it as those people over there. But when you bring it in personally and locally, then it is a call to action. It's a call to moving forward. And so that's why it's confessing the Beatitudes, not just the Beatitudes. Because I wanted them to write a confession at the end of each study, a confession of faith, not a confession necessarily of sin, but a confession of faith, where they can say, this is what I believe, based on the study we've done, based on the work I've done, based on what I see in my community. It's called the cycle of praxis, where you look and you see what's going on.
Explain praxis just for our audience.
Praxis is this notion that it's not just what you do, but how you reflect upon what you do. and how that reflection leads you to deeper thought, and how that deeper thought leads you to further action, and so on. So that's what I was about to explain. In the cycle of praxis, you would see something going on, and you might act on it, or you might reflect on it. And then that reflection leads you to ask the question, where does that come from? Why is that the case? What can we do to change the underlying situation? And that then might lead you to further action, that might lead you to further reflection, and so on. And so you end up in the cycle of doing. Praxis comes from the Greek word for action. You know, the word, the Acts of the Apostle is the praxis ton apostolon, the Acts of the Apostles, praxis. And so it has to do with action that is connected to reflection, connected to theological thought in theology when we talk about praxis.
When this went out, which is sort of an unusual way of doing it, that this actually went out to groups and then you got feedback. Is that
That's correct.
So tell me, what was the initial reaction from these groups?
Oh my gosh, some of the feedback was terrible. Oh, I had to completely rewrite it. I had to rewrite it in a voice that made sense for the church. One of the things about being an author is that you write in a particular voice, or particular voices, depending on who your audience is. So if you're writing to the academy, you're using one kind of voice. If you're writing to the church, you have to shift your voice. Not necessarily shift what you're saying, but shift how you say it so that it can be heard by people who aren't in this discourse, who haven't been in the middle of this argument for some time. And so that was the big shift for me, was getting back all the feedback from the women was, we don't understand this, or this isn't clear, or this feels very judgmental. So when I had to go in and look at what I'd written and say, okay, how do I write this in a way that the women can hear it? How do I write it in a way that it can be heard? And that's part of the reason I put a confession at the end of each chapter. Because it was a way for me to bring myself into the room so they could see me as a human being writing this and thinking about this with them, rather than this kind of authority from on high saying this is how you should read it.